everybody, good afternoon, and welcome to the 4-H wolf camp as we're talking about wildlife. My name is Rick O'Connor. I am with the University of Florida Extension Program. I'm in Pensacola, Florida, and I'm the Sea Grant agent there. For this particular issue or edition of this program, we're going to be talking about turtles. Now, there's all kinds of turtles found in the state of Florida, and a lot of times when you think about turtles, you immediately think of a place like this. You got this really cool looking pond, and there are several turtles. You probably can't see them, but they're floating around out there. We have 25 different kinds of turtles found in the entire state of Florida. 5 of those are sea turtles, or marine turtles, which you won't be able to see today, but we'll talk about them. We've got 2 that are called terrestrial turtles, and these are turtles that live on dry ground most of the time, and you'll get to meet both of them. We have 1 brackish water turtle that lives in bays and estuaries, and you'll get to meet that one. But the vast majority of them are what we call freshwater turtles. There's 17 different kinds of freshwater turtles in Florida, and they live in places like this. A lot of them will live in ponds, quiet parts of lakes, open rivers where there's a lot of current. You can find them in backwaters, you can find them on golf courses, you can find them in all kinds of places, ditches, things like that. So why don't we take a little bit and let's walk around the property, and I'll introduce you to some of Florida's turtles. Well, here's one of the turtles you can find in Florida. This is one of the 2 terrestrial turtles. Many of you probably have seen one of these guys. They're called box turtles, and they're called that because, again, the shape of their shell, it's a high dome shell, which is what you usually find in turtles you find on land-based areas. And for those who are not sure what terrestrial means, that means land. This is kind of where you always find box turtles. They like thick wooded areas like this. The other thing they call them box turtles for is, you'll notice they have a hinged shell. And you'll see they can close up. They're the only turtle that can do that, withdraw their head inside and actually close the top of the shell off. This one has been around people a lot, so it isn't actually doing it. But you'll see sort of the elephantine feet, as we call it. It's more of a land animal. Now, these guys will go in water. They're related to pond turtles, but they get into things like real shallow creeks, things that might not even come up to your ankles. But we have seen them sitting in creeks like that, and I've seen them actually in drainage ditches. But this is the box turtle. When you're looking at the basic anatomy, this part of the shell right here is what we call the plastron. The top of it is called the carapace, and they're attached together right here with what we call the bridge. And a lot of folks want to know, what exactly is the shell and can they take it off? There's cartoons that show turtles taking their shells off, but it is actually part of their anatomy. There's scales. All reptiles have scales. Turtles are in the reptile group, so they're going to have scales, and they kind of pack on top of each other. There's kind of bone in here, there's blood vessels and nerves, but you can see in this shell that I've got right here, it actually has their backbone. And these are the ribs that are sticking out to each side, so it actually is part of their backbone. And they're attached to this thing, so no, they cannot take it off, and they're physically attached to this thing. But again, this is a pretty cool way to hide. Most of these box turtles are omnivorous. They'll eat plants, animals, little bugs, worms, a variety of different things. But this is one of the cooler ones. We have 4 different kinds of box turtles in the state of Florida. 3 of them are over by our area. You generally only found about 2 throughout the rest of the state. But that's our friend, the box turtle. Well, you just met one of our friends, the box turtle, one of the terrestrial. This is one of our water turtles, and as we mentioned, there's 17 different kinds of water turtles found in the state of Florida. They have a shell that you can see is more aerodynamic for moving through the water, very different than what you see from the land turtles. And if we can get her to show her feet here in a second, as she will, there we go. Now we'll try to get her out. You can see they have these big webbed feet. And I don't know who said turtles are slow, but honestly, they run very fast on dry ground, and they're excellent swimmers. They're very difficult to catch. I mean, you can see those big webbed feet here. A lot of similarities between this and the box turtle. You got the carapace, which you talked about. You'll see the plastron and the bridge that connects the 2. And she's got this beautiful cream-colored plastron right here, which lets us know she's the Florida Cooter. There's several different kinds of cooters in the state of Florida. They differ from the sliders. You'll notice her stripes on her head are pin stripes, kind of like New York Yankee uniform. Very like someone took a pin and literally drew stripes on her head. The slider will have a big yellow patch on the cheek, and we might be able to find one of those later today. You will also notice that she's trying to snip right there, but turtles do not have teeth like their cousins, the alligators and the snakes. They have a beak, but a lot of these beaks, some of them are blade-like, and they eat animals like fish or snails or worms, things like that. Or they'll be like hers, and they'll be serrated. and the serrated ones are herbivores. They actually feed on plants. Now within this group, the cooters and the sliders, they actually begin life when they're small. They're carnivores, and they feed primarily on worms and bugs and things of that nature. And then when they get older, their teeth become more serrated. They become almost totally vegetarian. And a lot of people worry about having these in their ponds because they're going to eat all of their fish. They actually don't eat fish when they get to this size. You'll notice she's a big female, and I will say with turtles in general, the females are bigger than the males because they've got to carry the eggs. And when it's time to let the eggs go, she will leave the pond, go up, look for a high, dry, sandy area to dig a hole and lay her eggs. They will go as far as 1,000 feet from the water to find a spot like that. A lot of them get run over on the roads. I'm sure some of you have seen that, unfortunately. And then she'll drop anywhere from 10 to 20 eggs. And then they cover them up, go away, go back to the pond. They don't take care of their eggs. And the eggs, actually, the sex of the offspring is going to be determined by the temperature of the egg in the nest. Those that are on the top of the nest that are warmer will become females, and those at the base of the nest will end up becoming males. The temperature change is right around 29 degrees centigrade. Higher than that, you're female. Below that, you'll be male. But this is one of the Florida cooters, one of the 17 different riverine turtles we have. And she's a pretty cool turtle. Let's go find some more. Well, here is another one of the terrestrial turtles we talked about, the one of two. This one is called the Gopher Tortoise. And they call them the Gopher Tortoise because of this. They dig burrows. The box turtle does not do that, but you'll notice it's in a more open area. This is what they like, a sandy type thing. You'll notice the burrow is shaped more like a loaf of bread, so now you know it's not an armadillo or anything like that. And they also know that the width of the burrow is equal to the width of the shell. So that if a gopher tortoise, you'll notice here, he cannot close his hinge. So to protect themselves, they'll take their armored legs like this, they'll cover their face, and they'll turn sideways like this in the burrow and basically block entrance to get in or out. But this is a pretty cool turtle. This is like, you can see the elephant looking legs. This one does not like to be in the water at all. Unlike the box turtle, just doesn't go in the water at all. A dome-shaped, almost bread-shaped looking kind of square shell. You'll see the diamond pattern on it. We got the plastron with the lines. Actually, this is one way to age a turtle, is to count the number of rings on this. It's a rough estimate of how old the turtle is. You'll see the big claws on the forelegs, and the forelegs are much, much larger than the hind legs. But that's for digging this burrow, and they're very, very good diggers. Again, you'll notice the hind legs look almost like elephants. So again, it's definitely a land-based turtle. This right here is known as the gular. And that is found on the male gopher tortoises. The females don't have that. It's much smaller, much more reduced, and they'll use that in battles with other males. They literally will kind of hook each other up, kind of ram each other like the old jousting days, and try to flip their competitor over onto their backs. And then, you know, again, the winner gets the food, the winner gets the burrow. The general rule on burrows, you might see another one right over there. The general rule on burrows is 1 turtle per burrow, but that varies. We have found as many as 3 or 4 in one burrow. They'll move around feeding during the middle part of the morning is when they like to eat, but if thunderstorms come or a fire starts or something like that, they'll run down into a burrow even if it's not theirs, and sometimes they'll dig separate burrows around just so they've got backup burrows if they need it. Generally, when turtle scientists are estimating the number of gophers, they use 1.6 as the number. So you count the number of burrows you see in the area, multiply that by 1.6, and that gives you a rough idea of how many gopher tortoises are probably living here. Another interesting thing about them is that down in this burrow, not only is it a great place for them to hide, it's a great place for the other creatures to hide. So during a thunderstorm or a wildfire or a prescribed burn, lots of animals, they've estimated up to over 370 different kinds of animals will go down and live in those burrows when it gets too hot or too cold or fire. And that does include snakes. Rattlesnakes love to use these burrows as a den to get away from bad weather or fires. We call this guy Keystone for that reason, because as their numbers decline, and the burrows disappear, those animals also do not have a place to hide during bad times. This guy is strictly a vegetarian. All he eats is shoots of plants. You'll notice here it's a little bit overgrown, so they're going to wander off and look for some shorter areas to feed on. But they like short grass, so open prairies, grasslands, pastures and farms, those are popular places. Gardens, you might find them even in your yard. and then again they'll dig the burrow here. This is protected in the state of Florida. Around the state of the southeast United States, the numbers of gophers have been declining because of primarily loss of habitat. It was also a popular food item back in the early parts of the 20th century. So for those two reasons, their numbers have declined, and they're slow growing like all turtles, lay few eggs. Now with these guys, not like the river turtles, when they come up, they generally lay their eggs right here in what's called the apron, where they throw their sand. And they may only lay 4 or 5 eggs. That's about it. So they got very low numbers of reproduction, and that's one of the reasons their return to the southeast has been kind of slow. But this is our friend the gopher tortoise, one of the cooler ones we've got. Well, here's another one of our riverine or freshwater turtles. You'll notice I'm wearing a glove. This is a soft shell. This is the Florida soft shell. We have 3 kinds of soft shells in the state of Florida, and how you tell them apart, I don't know if you can see, but right there on the back there are these little knobs. If you have knobs, it's the Florida. If they're spiny, it's the spiny. And if there aren't any, it's the smooth. So this one is the Florida soft shell. And this guy is found throughout the state of Florida. Soft shells, most of the other 2 soft shells particularly, really like rivers. That's where they like to be. They bury in the sand. They have extremely long necks. They hide in the sand, and when a fish comes by, they can reach out with their long necks and grab it. Now again, I mentioned that turtles don't have teeth, but this particular turtle has bones in the roof of its mouth turned vertical that it can use like a blade to help cut the fish, making it easier for them to catch them and swallow it. So this is why you wear the glove if you're going to hold him for a long period of time. You'll notice he's pretty docile right now, but it could turn with that long neck and grab your hand, so we're going to make sure that doesn't happen. It's got a very soft shell. This is where they get their common name. It feels like leather. There's not even really hardly any scales in it. And you'll notice the plastron is very, very reduced in this guy. They're lightly colored. Some of them have spots across the silk, and they have that long snorkel on their head so that they can stick that up with just their eyes and snorkel, hide in that sand so the fish can't see them, but they can continue to breathe. But this is the soft-shell turtle. Here's another one of the riverine turtles. We talked about the cooter. We met that one when we saw that one earlier. But this is the slider, and you'll notice again the shell is almost round, serrated at the bottom, but it's not as football shaped as you see with the cooter. It does have the yellow plastron, but the little dots along the side here, and actually as it gets older you'll start to see black blotches here in this area as it gets older. This one is hiding in. It does not have a hinge like the box turtle, so it can't close up, but it's pulled itself in, so you aren't going to be able to see the side of the head. But it does have this big yellow cheek. Now they have a cousin from further west in the United States called the Redeared Slider. And a lot of people have seen those. It looks just like this guy, except right where the ear would be is a red patch. Those are non-native to Florida. They're not found here. They are sold at pet stores, and people buy them, and then all of a sudden the turtles, you can see right here, it's not that big, but it'll eventually get to be about 10 inches long. And at that point, a lot of times folks don't know what to do with it. It's too big to keep, so they take it to a pond or a creek or somewhere and they let it go. So we've got red-eared sliders all over the state of Florida, but just to let you know, it is a non-native species and it is illegal to release them. You should not be releasing red-eared sliders. If you have one that you don't want anymore, contact FWC. They have a program called Pet Amnesty, and they will come get your turtle for you. During the Pet Amnesty, they will do that. But this is the Yellowbellied Slider. Well, this is another Yellowbellied Slider. Again, you can see that yellow cheek, but I've got this one to show you a couple of things. Number one, they're a little bit of aggressive. They have a tendency, especially the males, but this is a male. You'll notice these long fingernails or long claws on the front legs. You'll find that on the cooters and the sliders, some of our freshwater turtles, which is one way to indicate that it's a male. The other one is this gigantic big bull tail. You'll notice the yellow patches. You didn't see that on the younger one, so again, this is an older individual. And also, I'm trying to show you here the size. Male turtles, especially the riverine turtles, are much, much smaller than the females. So the females will be almost twice as long as this to carry the eggs. But there he is, our guy slider. Well, this is a little turtle, and you would think it's a baby, but this is a full-grown adult. We have 2 types of turtles that look like this. One's called the mud turtle, and it spends a lot of time on the bottom. Actually, some of them will climb trees as high as 6 feet in trees. And then we have the musk turtle. Well, this one is the mud. You'll see the stripes on the side of the head, but you'll also notice it's got what they call a helmet-shaped head. I'm sorry, a helmet-shaped shell. But you'll also notice it's got a long neck, and I'm holding it very, very carefully. It looks a lot like a snapper. People think they are. It's not a snapper, but they can bite just as hard as a snapper can. So you got to be very, very careful. You can see his mouth there. He's not happy. But these are very, very common in our rivers around the state of Florida. This is a pretty cool turtle. It's called a Diamondback Terrapin, and it is our only brackish water turtle. You'll see it's flat shelled. Again, it's very aquatic, big web feet. But this one loves salt water. It does not like the Gulf of Mexico. That is too salty. But any of our bays and estuaries is a very popular place to find this guy. It really likes salt marshes. Another cool thing about this turtle is you notice it's got light skin. All the other turtles we've shown you have very dark skin with yellow stripes or faded white stripes, something like that. But you'll notice this guy has sort of a light blue, whitish kind of skin and dark spots. It's a really beautiful turtle. We have them here all throughout Florida, but this is the Diamondback Terrapin. All right, the last one we'll show you here is a sea turtle. This obviously is just the shell. The carapace part of the shell, where again you can see the ribs, the backbone is no longer there. But this is one of 5 different marine turtles that we have here in the state of Florida. This one is a young juvenile green turtle, but we have loggerheads, leatherbacks, Kemp's Ridley, and hawksbills. All 5 can be found in the northern Gulf of Mexico, but only 2 of them nest regularly, and that would be the green, and then also it would be the loggerhead. These animals spend all their lives at sea. They navigate and migrate all over the Gulf of Mexico. Some of them leave the Gulf and actually go out into the open Atlantic. But it is true that when they return to lay their eggs and for breeding, they come back very close to where they were born. So the turtles that we find nesting on our beaches here in northern Gulf of Mexico are the turtles that have been here before. They're very long-lived animals. I'm sure you guys have all seen the movie Nemo and seen how turtles work. But the adults can get about, the shell can get carapace about 3 feet. The leatherback can get even larger, 6 feet. And it does have a leatherback kind of like thing. It doesn't have a scale pattern or scutes as you see right here. It looks more like the softshell. And they'll come up on the beach at night. Everybody's heard that story. They'll go up to high, dry ground. She will dig a hole and lay about 100 eggs. They're big females, so they can carry a lot of eggs. And they normally lay about 100 eggs. Cover those up. The temperature determination for the baby is the same. Warm eggs are going to be females. Cold eggs are going to be males. She will then leave. They will incubate for about 60 to 70 days, and then they hatch all together, coming out of what we call a run, and that usually occurs at night. And so when the babies come up out of the sand, of course, they begin to look at the reflection of light off the ocean, or the Gulf of Mexico in our case, and head in that direction. But many of you are probably aware that we have had some problems now with all the lighting on our beaches. They tend to go the wrong way, what we call disorientation. And in some areas, the disorientation is 60% of the nest. And so they go the wrong way, they get lost. If they're not by the water by sunup, or at least midday, they're going to dehydrate and die. They get run over on the highway. When the sun rises, the birds wake up. They come after and eat a lot, so we lose a lot of baby sea turtles to that. All 5 species of sea turtles are protected, federally protected. So there are a lot of programs to try to monitor these guys and make sure we keep them around for years. But these are our marine turtles, or sea turtles. Okay, so now that you have a chance to meet some of the turtles that you can find in Florida, what we're going to show you now is how biologists sort of what we call work up a turtle, and how we collect data and information from them. We've got a series of different data sheets. The first thing, of course, you would have is your handy-dandy little clipboard gizmo, and you got all your data sheets stuck in there to protect from the rain. There's a clipboard on the outside and a little cover right here to hold the pens and pencils, which is kind of nice. We usually carry this in a backpack on our field. You'll see I have 3 different sets of data sheets, and that varies which ones you're going to use. These, of course, we use anytime you go out in the field. You'll have a standard data sheet that you're going to fill out that will have weather information. What was the date? Where did you go? What was the GPS? And this, of course, is a GPS unit that will give you a pretty accurate location of where you actually are. Did you go by foot? Did you go by kayak? So all of this will be filled out whether you find a turtle or not. We complete these every single time. If we happen to find a turtle, then we have a data sheet here. This one is for nest crawling, and there's a variety of different things it's going to ask you to fill out here. And I'm going to show you basically how we fill those out. I'm going to use a regular turtle shell today instead of a live turtle to kind of demonstrate how this works. Basically, it's easier. But this is a terrapin shell, and so if you happen to catch a turtle, we would have this in a bucket or a tub or something like that.
You would try to kind of calm the animal down a little bit. But then we start with basic measurements. Always photographs. We always take pictures. We take pictures of the shell, we take pictures of the head. Again, you might remember from the other sections of this program, this is the carapace. We want photographs of that. We want photographs of the plastron, any unique markings on the animal, barnacles, cuts, scratches, things like that. We get pictures of everything. Pictures are really, really important to have. And then once again, you got the turtle in your hand, we'll get some basic measurements on it. This is called a caliper, and when you put it across the notch to right there, it can give you a size of what we call straight line carapace length, so that how long the carapace is. Of course, we can turn around and get the carapace width if we want to do that, and then if the turtle will cooperate, you can actually get the carapace height by doing it this way. There's a little notch right here on the posterior margin. You would set it right there, and this is how you would get the plastron length. And you could, at the widest point, get the plastron width if you needed to do that. Some folks have calipers, some don't, but in a lot of biologists, they prefer what we call curved length. And in a curved length situation, you're going to take this tape, you're going to set it right there, and you're going to do the same thing, but you are going straight over the curve of this thing. So this would be the measurement here. Again, you would do the same measurements, but you would be using this tape measure instead. So now that you've got them all, this isn't a live animal. The next thing we would do, is it a male or a female? Again, the difference right here would be a large, giant bull male tail. If you've got that, then of course you're going to record male. If it's not, then it's going to be a female. The next thing we'll do, after we got the basic measurements, I don't have a spring balance. I didn't bring that with me today, but we normally would put it in a mesh bag and weigh the animal so we got an idea how much it weighs. Then it's time to get some tissue sample and to mark it so that we know that this turtle has been worked up. And then, of course, if we find it again, we get an idea with marking it. We get an idea of how many different turtles are living in the area, how far do they move, how frequently do they come back to the same place. There's a lot of good information you can get from marking them. The old classic way is by what we call notching. And to do a notching, this is the data sheet here on how to do a notch. You can see the shell is kind of divided in quadrants, and you've got ones, tens, hundreds, and thousands. In the area where I'm working, we get numbers 500, USGS numbers 500 through 600. So let's say this is my first turtle, then I would notch it as a 500, and there's a scale right here where you do the numbers like 1, 2, 4, and 7. So in this case, I would mark notch 1 and 5 in the hundreds place. That would be 500. So this is turtle number 500. And it's just a triangle file. You'll just take that and you'll make a little kind of mark like that. You'll go in a little deep. It's a mark right here to tell you how deep. It will bleed. You have to be very careful doing this. But it'll make a notch right there. And so you'll have a notch in here, and then anybody else who finds this understands notching, understands the number system, and knows they've found your turtle, and they can contact you if they happen to find it. Also, if these things are ever illegally harvested, then that's another way to track. Not only do you have an illegally harvested turtle, but we know exactly where that turtle came from. The next thing we would do after we were done notching, and honestly the turtles really don't enjoy this at all, but you try to go down to, starting with the easiest thing to the thing they really hate the most. Notching is not real popular. The next thing is what we call pit tagging. It is sterile, so I'm not going to pull it out of the bag, but this is basically a small microchip, just like they do with dogs at vet offices. So what you would do is you would have the turtle, and it works a lot easier with two people. You would get the rear leg, move it. There's some skin right here. It's basically a little needle that goes in about maybe that far. Once you punch it in there, and then you got a plunger right here, you just push it in. And now the little microchip is in there and you're all done. So it's basically a shot. It doesn't go in very deep. There's no bleeding or anything like that. They really don't seem to mind this very at all. It's got a number on it. This number will go on the data sheet so we know what the pit tag number is. And then there's an instrument, it's basically a wand is what we call it, but you can move it over. It's kind of like the scanner at the grocery store. So if you move this over the wand, it will not only, you'll hear a beep and it'll tell you the number, and we then know what turtle it is. So this is what we call pit tagging, and we'll release it. Some of the things we do with the females, I don't have any of it here too, is put a satellite tag on it. So that way you can watch the satellites. Each time the animal comes up to get a breath of air, the satellite will register it, and you can actually track how far they're moving. Probably the thing they hate the most, though, is getting a tissue sample. And when we get tissues, we're doing that primarily because we want to understand the genetics behind the animal. So you take the back foot, it's webbed. Say my hand is a terrapin or a turtle foot. It'll be webbed right here, and right there at the very tip, this is, again, it's sterile, so I'm not going to pull out of the bag, but it's basically a blade, a round circle blade, kind of like getting your ear pierced. And so you would just punch it right there and get a piece of skin right off the edge of this thing. This is not sterile. You would have to sterilize the animal with some alcohol. Make a punch, you would have the skin. The skin goes into one of these vials of alcohol. It is numbered, that's where your pins come in. You got a Sharpie, so you'll number that, you'll number this. You'll put notes in your data sheet as to what number this was. And then this can go off to the lab where it can be analyzed for genetics and find out, you know, again, something about the population of these guys. Are terrapins from Choctawhatchee Bay breeding with terrapins in Pensacola Bay, for example? So this would all be worked up, and when you're all done and everything's ready to go, generally in the field, obviously this is very clean, so you know, you got the winds blowing and the sand is around, so we would turn over a 5-gallon bucket and kind of set everything up. Try to be as quick as possible so you can let the animal go. It's already kind of stressed out. But when we're all done working, we've got all the data information. We've got the animal has been marked. We got a GPS of where we found it. Then we let the turtle go. And then all of this goes stored into a computer, and this is how we work up turtles.